Okay, so Hare Krishna, very auspicious Ekadasi day to start Bhagavad-gita, start studying Bhagavad-gita. Let's chant the prayer. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
We welcome the youngest student in the Bhakti Shastri class as well. Thank you for joining us. Hare Krishna. So, Bhagavad-gita, we'll study it in 3 modules, 3 parts. So first, chapter 1 to 6, then chapter 7 to 12, chapter 13 to 18. This also corresponds with the way some acharyas kind of break Bhagavad-gita into sections. We'll speak about that more. First, let's just say a very nice prayer that when I was studying Bhakti Shastri, my teacher always chanted this, and I really like this prayer. So, Sartyam Arjuna Syado Kurvam Gitamritam Dado Lokatrayo Pakaraya Tasmai Krishnatmane Namaha. Hitu Prabhu, are you able to read the translation?
To begin with, I offer my obeisances unto Lord Sri Krishna, who accepted the position of the chariot driver of Arjun, just to distribute this ambrosia of the Gita for the benefit of all the 3 worlds. Gita Mahatmya.
Thank you. It's a really nice prayer. In many ways, it kind of summarizes the essence of the Bhagavad-gita between Krishna and Arjuna, this kind of relationship that the Supreme Lord is prepared to become a chariot driver, the Supreme Lord is prepared to become a servant of his devotee out of love. And then he speaks the Bhagavad-gita not just for Arjuna, but for all of us. So Bhagavad-gita, you could say, is the outpouring of love from Krishna's heart to Arjuna and to all of us. So as an introduction, we'll speak a little bit about the context and history of the Bhagavad-gita. We know it's part of Mahabharata, so we'll speak a little bit about that. Speak about earlier commentaries, Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad-gita and the history of that. Then in the Bhagavad-gita, when you open the book, you got before chapter 1, we got setting the scene, dedication, preface, introduction. So we'll go through that a little bit. We'll speak a little bit about Bhagavad-gita as a yoga shastra. So yoga means connection. And Bhagavad-gita is a yoga shastra, a scripture that teaches about connection. And we mention a few study tips. We'll do an overview and key themes, just like we had key themes in Nectar of Instruction. We also have key themes in Bhagavad-gita. And after that, we'll be ready to dive straight into chapter 1. Thank you. So my husband just brought up a whole kind of, I don't know how to call it, a whole load of books. These are all different Bhagavad-gita commentaries. So it's not just Prabhupada's Bhagavad-gita, it's books, different. These are the contemporary devotees. This is Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. This is also Chaitanya Charan Prabhu. This is Navin Krishna Prabhu, Hridayananda Maharaj. Also something I use quite a lot is Burijan Prabhu's Surrender Unto Me. So if you do have this book, then this is something you can use. If you don't, then you have the facility to get it. Please get it. It's a really, really good book for studying. And also Gauranga Darshan Prabhu. It's an overview of Gita Subodhini. Just kind of go through the verses and the flow of the Bhagavad Gita. This is also really, really good. And then, of course, we'll speak a little bit about earlier commentaries. So these are contemporary devotees, or more or less contemporary devotees. There are earlier commentaries as well. So there are lots of Bhagavad Gitas. At one point, Prabhupada was talking about what books to translate. He was talking with his disciples, so different books. And at this point, Bhagavad-gita was already translated by Prabhupada, and it's published. And then Prabhupada says, yeah, and we could translate this and that, and we could do Bhagavad-gita as well. And then one of the devotees said, but Prabhupada, you already done Bhagavad-gita. And he said, no, that's one Bhagavad-gita, but there's also Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, Baladev Vidyabhushan. There's so many Bhagavad-gitas. It's the same teaching, it's just, we'll see how it's different perspectives. Okay. Now, the history of Bhagavad-gita. Bhagavad-gita comes in the Mahabharat. So Bharat is a name for India. Maha means great, so it's like you could say the history of Greater India. At that time, the emperor or the king of that area, Bharat, was also the emperor of the whole world. And many of you are probably very familiar with this, and so please be patient with me. Some may not be. So how does the Bhagavad Gita come about? So it's a family drama, you could say, if you read the Mahabharata. So of course it can go further and further back. Well, let's start with Maharaj Santanu, who first married Ganga Devi, the river goddess personified. And they had several sons, none of whom survived. There is a backstory to that as well. But they had one son who did survive. It was Bhishma. So, but when just after Bhishma was born, Ganga Devi left Maharaj Santanu, the goddess left Maharaj Santanu and took Bhishma Dev with her. And she said she'll come back when Bhishma is grown up. So Santanu Maharaj was left on his own. And as a king, and not even as a king, he was finding it difficult. So he wanted to marry again, and he met this Satyavati, who was interestingly a fisherman's daughter. So usually that wouldn't be a very kind of appropriate match, but somehow this fisherman's daughter Satyavati, she was so attractive that a great sage Parashara, he already felt that he needs to have a child with her. So they had a child who was Vyasadeva. So it wasn't like, nowadays we speak about illicit connection with women. People go out in a nightclub and have a child with this, have a child with that. So it wasn't like that. This was a great sage, and that child was Vyasadeva, who wrote all the Vedic scriptures. So it was obviously not some kind of degraded connection. So Satyavati already had Vyasadeva, and then Maharaj Santanu saw her. He fell in love with her and really wanted to marry her. The only problem was that Satyavati's father, this fisherman, he said, you can only marry her if her son becomes the king. Now, this was a problem because Santanu already had a grown-up son, Bhishma, who was the heir to the throne. But Bhishma, seeing that his father so much wanted to marry Satyavati, he said, okay, Satyavati's son can have the kingdom. For the happiness of my father, I renounce the kingdom. So Santanu Maharaj very happily went back to Satyavati's father. Satyavati's father said, no, Bhishma Dev might say that, but maybe Bhishma Dev's children, they will say that the throne should belong to us. So Santanu Maharaj thought, okay, what can I do? There's nothing I can do. But Bhishma Dev, seeing that his father was so sad, he said, okay, I take a vow, I'll never marry. So I won't have children. Nobody will doubt the claim of Satyavati's son. And when he said this vow, then that's when the name Bhishma, which means like a terrible vow, that's when it was spoken from the sky. That's how he got the name Bhishma. So he took a vow never to marry. He was also going to always serve whoever becomes the king in the Kuru dynasty. Santanu and Satyavati had two sons, Vichitravirya and Chitrangada. Chitrangada died quite young. He was in a fight with a Gandharva, some heavenly being who was also called Chitrangada, and he was killed. So Vichitravirya became the king, and he had to marry. So Bhishma, as a service to Vichitravirya, went to the Swayamvara, the marriage ceremony of the king of Kashi's daughters. He had three daughters, Amba, Ambika, and Ambalika. and got these 3 princesses. He kidnapped them. Amba, the oldest, she was very upset because she was already in love with Shalva, another king. So Bhishma said, okay, you can go and marry Shalva. But when Amba went to marry Shalva, then Shalva said, you already been touched by another man, I don't want to marry you. So poor Amba ended up not having a husband. She was so upset and so determined to take revenge on Bhishma that in her next life she became Shikandi, who eventually in the battle of Kurukshetra killed Bhishma. The other 2 princesses, Ambika and Ambalika, they married Vichitravirya, but Vichitravirya also died very young before he could have sons. So now there was the kingdom, no king. So Satyavati, she became very concerned. And then there is some Vedic custom that if the husband dies very young, then the husband's brother, husband dies very young without children, the husband's brother can beget children. This is not practiced in Kali Yuga so much. This is one of the things that is not supposed to be practiced, but at that time this was a practice. So because Satyavati already had a son before her marriage to Santanu, so Satyavati and Parashara had this son Vyasadeva, the great sage. So she asked Vyasa, please come and beget a son for Ambika and Ambalika. So this is what happened, but Vyasadeva was a sage. He wasn't a, you could say, very well-groomed person in the lady's eyes. So when Ambika saw Vyasa, she closed her eyes. So she had a son who was blind. This was Dhritarashtra. And when Ambalika saw Vyasa, she went really pale, like with her shock. And that's how Pandu Maharaj was born, who was very kind of pale, whitish color. And then they tried again, but then one of the princesses, she just sent her maidservant instead. She says she can't go through this again. And that's how Vidura was born. So Vidura was born from Vyasadeva and the maidservant. That's why he wasn't, even though he was perfectly fine, he wasn't in the line of succession, although he was in the court and he was, for most of the time, he was much appreciated. So there was the 2 boys, Dhritarashtra and Pandu. Dhritarashtra was blind, even though he was the older, he was blind, so he wasn't allowed to be the king. Pandu Maharaj became the king. Dhritarashtra married Gandhari, the lady who also tied her eyes with a cloth, so she's not any better than her husband. And they had 100 sons and 1 daughter. So these 100 sons are Duryodhan is the oldest, and then he's got 99 brothers, Dushasan, others, Vikarna. Pandu Maharaj, he first married Kunti, and then later on married Madri. But somehow one time Pandu went out to hunt. Kings used to hunt both to practice kind of martial arts or warriorship or archery, even in times of peace, and also to keep the population of wild animals down. So one time he went out to hunt, and somehow by mistake he killed a sage instead of an animal, and the sage cursed him that when he would unite with his wife, he will die. So Pandu Maharaj is also stuck. He can't have children. He actually resigned the kingdom and he went to the forest. Dhritarashtra became a kind of office holder king, not the proper king, but while Pandu was away, he became the kind of office holder king. And Pandu, while he was in the forest, Kunti Devi, she told him that actually I got a benediction from Durvasa Muni that I can call any demigod and I can have a child from that demigod. The Durvasa Muni probably knew that it will come handy for her, because otherwise she couldn't have children through Pandu. So Pandu said, oh, that's great, and call a demigod and then we can have a son. So Kunti first called Dharma or Yamaraj. That's how Yudhishthir Maharaj was born. Then Indra. That's how Arjuna was born. And then, first Yudhishthir was born, then the next one is Vayu. He called Vayu, so that's how Bhima was born, and then Indra. That's how Arjuna was born. So even though these boys are called Pandavas, and they're Pandu Maharaj's sons, they also have like a demigod father. And then Madri, the other wife, she also wanted children. So Kunti told her this mantra, with which she called the demigod. And Madri was very clever, so instead of calling one demigod, she called the twin Ashwini Kumaras, so she can have 2 children. And that's how Nakula and Sahadev were born. So these were the 5 Pandavas, that's their story. So basically they are cousin brothers, the Duryodhan and his 99 brothers and Pandavas. Dhritarashtra, he got very used to kind of being the king. That wasn't so much of a problem, but he wanted his sons to kind of continue to kind of inherit the kingdom from him. He didn't want to give the kingdom back to the Pandavas when the Pandavas grew up and went back from the forest, went back. Okay, and there is one more personality we didn't mention. That's Karna, who's also Kunti's son. Before her marriage, to try out the mantra, she called the sun god. So Surya Dev came and he said, I can't just come and not give you anything. So he gave her a son, Karna, who was born with gold armor on his body. That's why one of his name is Vasusena. Now, Kunti Devi wasn't married at the time, so she put the baby in a basket and in the river. And then somehow a chariot driver, Adhirata, found him and brought him up. So that's the story of Karna. So Karna for a long time didn't know that he's actually the son of the sun god and Kunti Devi, and that he's a brother of the Pandavas. So somehow Karna ended up on the side of Duryodhan and his brothers. So this is the story I told you in about 10 minutes, 10-15 minutes. This is in the Mahabharata, which is, I think it's about 1500 pages in Krishna Dharma's edition, but if you read the original one, it's even longer. I don't know how many tens of thousands of verses, and it's full of all sorts of drama and scandal and trials, tribulations, highs and lows. And just at the most dramatic point, when these 2 camps, Duryodhans and the Pandavas, are on the battlefield, just ready to start fighting, Krishna says, a word from our sponsors. Now, I'm sure you don't watch movies, you don't go to the cinema, and I don't know if they still do it, but it used to be that at the most exciting point in a film, the film would stop and there would be some advertisement. Because everybody's on the edge of their seat, they're not gonna kind of not continue watching. So it's a little bit similar psychology. So everybody's on the edge of their seat, the battle is just about to start, and now we have Bhagavad-gita. When I first met the devotees and they gave me a Bhagavad-gita, they said it's about a battle, and I really liked history, I really liked reading about battles. So I thought, okay, it's going to be an interesting book to read. So I opened the book, started reading. First chapter, it seems like, okay, they're kind of all getting excited for the battle. And then second chapter, there's no battle. It's just kind of talking and philosophy. Maybe in the third chapter, more philosophy, more and more and more philosophy. And somehow I read the whole Bhagavad-gita looking for the battle to start, and it never started. I mean, it starts afterwards. It's quite a long description. But this is how Krishna tricks people, or Vyasadeva, who wrote it down, tricks people to read Bhagavad-gita because it's at the most exciting point. Okay, and then Bhagavad-gita can also be considered like a nested conversation. So like when you got these Russian dolls, I don't know if you know them, you can put there's a big doll, you take it apart, there's a smaller one, take it apart, smaller one, like that. Or nests, sometimes you can put plates into each other. So the biggest one is Vyasadeva speaking the Vedic literatures, and Ganesh is writing it down. You probably know that story. And then this part is spoken by Vaishampayana Rishi to Maharaj Janamejaya, who's Parikshit Maharaj's son. Parikshit is Arjuna's grandson. So Arjuna's great-grandson is Janamejaya. He did a big fire sacrifice to try to save his father, Parikshit, who was cursed to be bitten by a snake bird. It's in the Bhagavatam story. And at that sacrifice, the story of the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad-gita, is spoken. And as we start reading, we'll see that the first verse is spoken by Dhritarashtra to Sanjaya. So Dhritarashtra is the king that we just kind of spoke about. He's the father of the 100 sons. And his secretary or personal secretary is Sanjaya. So Bhagavad-gita starts with Dhritarashtra Uvacha. Dhritarashtra said, Dharmakshetre, Kurukshetre, what happened on the battlefield of Kurukshetra. And then starts the conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. Okay, so you could say it's a conversation and a conversation and a conversation, like that. So that's the nested conversation. And even though it's Krishna teaching Arjuna, it's not just for Arjuna, it's for all of us. Krishna is speaking to all of us on this battlefield, speaking some very deep truths, very practical teachings. Now you might ask the question, if it's a philosophical discussion for all times and all places, why is Krishna not sitting down under a banyan tree in a peaceful forest with the birds chirping and the waterfalls, peaceful sound, and speaking Bhagavad-gita there? Why is it on a battlefield? This is a question that you can think about. Why is Bhagavad-gita spoken on a battlefield?
Is it to illustrate the fact that we have to do what Krishna says, do our duty regardless?
Okay, good direction, definitely. Aline?
Our life is a battlefield.
Yeah. So you could say our life is a battlefield, and if it was under a banyan tree in a peaceful forest, you could say, okay, if you are under a banyan tree in a peaceful forest, it's easy to follow, you can follow it, but life is a battle. So if Arjuna can do it in a battle, fighting against his cousin brothers in a most difficult situation, then we can also do it. Hopefully we'll never ever be in a situation as difficult as Arjuna's. So quite often the examples given in scripture are very, very extreme to show us that if devotees can act in the right way, even in these most extreme situations, then we in our smaller battles can definitely also act properly. So that's the reason. And also Arjuna is not a sannyasi, he's not a brahmana, he's a kshatriya, householder, living in the world. Krishna is not telling him, just give up everything, go away, become renounced. He says, no, you need to do your duty, and your duty is to kill other people. So in the same way, we also, the message of Bhagavad-gita is not to give up your duty and go away to the forest. It's do your duty in this world while thinking about Krishna. Okay. A few other points relating to Bhagavad-gita. So Bhagavad-gita sometimes is taken that it's a mythological story, it's a kind of story that a symbolical story, just to kind of represent the 5 Pandavas or the 5 senses and like that. But you can take different meanings. We'll speak about that later on. But Bhagavad-gita, the conversation, the battle actually happened. So this place, Kurukshetra, is actually there in India, a little bit northwest from Delhi. These are some pictures from the place Kurukshetra. I also found it on Google Maps. So this is the red dot, that's Kurukshetra. So if you got India here, that's where Kurukshetra is. And you can see New Delhi. It's like that's the kind of how would you say, direction from there. Okay. Another point is all Vedic scriptures are divided into two categories. One is called Shruti and one is called Smriti. So Shruti means that which is heard. When we speak about the 9 processes of devotional service, Shravanam means to hear, so it comes from the similar root, same root. So Shruti, that which is heard, and Smriti means that which is remembered, so Smaranam. You probably remember that from Nectar of Instruction, I hope. Krishna Smaranam, to remember Krishna. So Smriti means that which is remembered. So these are the two kinds of scriptures. Shruti, that which is heard, means that which is spoken directly by Krishna, directly by the Lord. So this refers to the 4 Vedas, Rig, Yajur, Sama, Atharva Veda, and the Upanishads. Bhagavad-gita is also called Gita Upanishad, so it's one of the Upanishads. So this is Shruti. And Smriti, that which is remembered, which means that which is spoken by the sages. So the sages, great devotees, great teachers, acharyas, they heard the Lord's words, the words of the Lord, the Shruti. They contemplated it, realized it, and now they are speaking it. So that's Smriti. And that's Puranas like Bhagavad Purana, Mahabharata, Ramayana. So because Bhagavad-gita is in the Mahabharata, which is Smriti, but it's Shruti because it's spoken by Krishna directly. So it's a special scripture, it's a Shruti in a Smriti. Okay? So try to remember these two kinds of scriptures, Shruti and Smriti, that which is heard, that which is remembered. Okay? And like I said, it's an Upanishad. It's you could say it's the essence of all Upanishads, Gita Upanishad. Now throughout history, there's been many commentaries on Bhagavad-gita. A few of them that I mentioned, I will show you. One is by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. This it's called Sarartha Varshinitika. So just like Prabhupada, he goes through the verses, translation, and then writes a commentary. The nectar, it's showering the essential meaning. That's the title of the this commentary. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur's disciple, Baladev Vidyabhushan, he also wrote a commentary called Gita Bhushana. And they say that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, his commentary is more to do with rasa, more to do with the kind of feelings and emotions. We sometimes read out little bits from it. Sometimes he kind of writes a conversation that goes on, like in the Bhagavad-gita is just one verse. But Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur describes a whole thought process that goes on in Krishna's head or Arjuna's head, or they're having this kind of conversation on the side, and that's why the next verse comes. So sometimes we'll read that out. And then Gita Bhushana is more philosophical, it's more tattva. And then Bhaktivinoda Thakur, he's got this, he also translated both of them, Gita Bhushana and Sarartha Varshinitika, and he put his own commentaries there. So these are some of the earlier commentaries. And then, of course, Srila Prabhupada's commentary. Srila Prabhupada actually dedicates Bhagavad-gita to Baladev Vidyabhushan. Okay, so you can see in the dedication. Okay. And then the story of Prabhupada's Bhagavad-gita. Prabhupada wrote a translation and commentary, and that was somehow lost, stolen. So he wrote another one. But it seemed to be too big, so it was difficult to publish. And somehow in 1968, abridged, a shortened version was published. I once heard Chaitanya Prabhu tells the story that the devotees were trying really, really hard to somehow get the book published, and then they got a letter from Macmillan, which is quite a big publisher at the time, that they want a Bhagavad-gita. So devotees got really excited. I don't know, maybe Brahmananda, one of the devotees, went to the offices of Macmillan, all excited that now they can publish Bhagavad-gita. But it turned out that it wasn't Macmillan, it was just one of the clerks in Macmillan wanted a Bhagavad-gita for himself, and that's why he wrote. So while Brahmananda Prabhu was talking with this clerk, the kind of supervisor or the manager came by, and he realized, oh, okay, you do have a Bhagavad Gita. He wanted one, but he says this is too long. So they had to they were doing like a series of books on different religions, so the Quran, Bible. So they wanted all of them in the same size. So they had to cut it down. So it wasn't like we have Bhagavad Gita now with Sanskrit and transliteration and word for word and translation and commentary. I think it was just the Sanskrit, maybe translation, or maybe just the translation, no word for word, and a lot of the purports were also cut out to kind of fit in. And then when finally the devotees kind of got enough money, and they managed to kind of organize the publishing, the whole Bhagavad Gita. That's when Prabhupada wrote the preface. So he says, originally I wrote the Bhagavad Gita as it is in the form which is presented now, but when it was first published, it was cut short, no illustrations, no explanations for most of the original verses. But now it can kind of go back to the original way like Prabhupada originally wrote it. So this is how this preface is what Prabhupada wrote when the actual unabridged version could be published. Okay. And then I didn't mention it, but it's probably quite clear that this first part, setting the scene, this is for those from an Indian background, they probably don't need it because it's kind of part of the culture and they know it. But for a Western audience, this whole story about the Mahabharata and the Kauravas and the Pandavas, so that's described in the setting the scene. Otherwise, it's difficult to understand what's going on. And then a preface, just a few more points from the preface I wanted to mention. So Prabhupada tells the history, and then he also says that, speaks about the right mood of understanding Bhagavad Gita. I hope I can find it. Anyway, he says, to interpret Bhagavad Gita without any reference to the will of Krishna is the greatest offense. In order to save oneself from this offense, one has to understand the Lord as the Supreme Personality, as he was directly understood by Arjuna, Lord Krishna's first disciple. So we should have the same mood as Arjuna has. Arjuna surrenders to Krishna as his disciple, and he says, Karishye vachanam tava, I'll do what you want me to do. So if we read Bhagavad Gita and at the end we come to the same conclusion as Arjuna, that we want to surrender to Krishna and do what he wants us to do, then we are reading in the right way. And then Prabhupada also says that people who kind of make a selfish interpretation in using Krishna's words for their own agenda, then that's not the right way to read Bhagavad Gita. Using Krishna for their own ends. Sometimes, I'm from Hungary, so we had quite often when sannyasis or gurus would come to Hungary, they would only speak English. Most of the devotees don't speak English. So the sannyasi would speak, and that would be a translator who translates the sannyasi's words. Now, a good translator is completely seamless, so they just say what the speaker says. But a bad translator is somebody who the speaker is saying something. Everybody's listening very carefully to the translation because they want to know what the speaker says. But the translator starts giving their own interpretation, their own agenda, start advertising themselves. So these people who, using the fame and the good kind of good name of this speaker, of the sannyasi or the guru, to get kind of support for their own program. So in the same way, these interpreters, commentators on Bhagavad-gita who don't follow the actual spirit of the Bhagavad-gita, they use Krishna's fame and the Bhagavad-gita's fame to get power or support for their own agenda. So this is these so-called scholars, politicians, philosophers, swamis with a perfect knowledge of Krishna try to banish or kill Krishna when they write in commentary. So this is not what Krishna actually means. I know better what Krishna means. So Prabhupada quite often speaks about this misuse of the Bhagavad-gita. Okay. And then Prabhupada also exhibits his own humility. He says, if personally I have any credit in this matter, it's only that I have tried to present Bhagavad-gita as it is, without any adulteration. So it's not my glory. He says, let me find. Yeah. And then he also says that if even one man becomes a pure devotee of the Lord, we shall consider our attempt a success. So again, Prabhupada's humility. Sometimes, if we organize a program and only one or two people come, then we feel that it's a failure. Or if we go out to distribute books and we don't sell any books or just one or two small books, then we feel that we are a failure. And Prabhupada undertook this huge attempt, this huge effort to write all the commentaries on Bhagavad-gita, and he says, if even one man becomes a pure devotee, that will be success. So we should take some encouragement from that and follow in Prabhupada's footsteps in that way. Okay. A few more points about Bhagavad-gita. It's like I said, it's a yoga shastra. So it's a scripture that teaches connection. So the word yoga is mentioned 78 times. Bhagavad-gita has 700 verses. 78 times yoga mentioned. And then yoga variants like yogena, yogaya, it's 28 times. And then yukta, which also comes from the same root, it's 49 times. So yoga is mentioned many, many times. This is also the essential message of connecting the soul with the Supreme Soul, connecting the Atma with the Paramatma. And like I said, yoga means connection. And then if we look at the context of Bhagavad-gita, that also shows union, connection, or yoga. So where is the Bhagavad-gita spoken? On a battlefield, on Krishna and Arjuna are standing on Arjuna's chariot. So at first, there is yoga or union between Krishna and Arjuna. They have the same mission, the same intention. So they both went to the battlefield of Kurukshetra to fight in the war. Same mission, same intention. They are on the same chariot. So there is connection, union. Then once Arjuna sees all the people he needs to fight, he refuses to fight, then there is disconnection, viyoga. So physically you could say they're still in the same place, but there is disconnection. Krishna wants him to fight, Arjuna doesn't want to fight, so there is disconnection. And then Krishna speaks Bhagavad-gita, and at the end, again, there is yoga or union in intention. So Arjuna again wants to do what Krishna wants him to do. He wants to fight. The difference is that in the beginning, you could say that Arjuna wanted to fight to regain the kingdom. And after hearing Bhagavad-gita, Arjuna wants to fight to please Krishna. So you could also say that that's the message of the Bhagavad-gita, that we don't give up our duties, we continue doing our duties, but instead of doing them to please ourselves, or doing them because that's the right thing to do, we do them to please Krishna. So Arjuna's activities didn't change. He was fighting, but instead of fighting as a Kshatriya, fighting to regain the kingdom, he was fighting to please Krishna. He was fighting as a devotee. Okay? Okay. Now, who managed to read the introduction in the last few days? I'm sure you've read it before, but in the last few days you kind of went through it a little bit. Okay, it's quite long and very, very involved. You could say that all the philosophy is there in the introduction. In fact, okay, let's speak a little bit about the introduction and then I speak about something else. So the introduction starts with offering obeisances to Rupa Goswami and the other Goswamis, the spiritual master, Lord Chaitanya, Panchatattva, Gopis, Srimati Radharani. In fact, this is the only place in Bhagavad-gita where Srimati Radharani is directly mentioned. Is this Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari. When we read the verses, we'll see that in some commentaries, some acharyas, kind of certain verses, they explain bringing in Radharani, but in general, Radharani is not mentioned. This is the only place. And these devotional prayers, they show the devotional mood that we should have when reading Bhagavad-gita. And Prabhupada speaks about how we should take Bhagavad-gita as directed by the speaker, just like with a doctor prescribes some medicine, we should take it like he prescribes it. Now the problem is that you need to read Bhagavad-gita accepting Krishna as the Supreme Lord. But unless, so you need to understand Bhagavad-gita in a submissive spirit, but unless you have a submissive spirit, you don't understand Krishna. So it's a little bit of a catch-22. So you can only understand Krishna if you have a submissive spirit, but if you don't have a submissive spirit, but if you don't understand Krishna, you can't have a submissive spirit. Okay. What to do? Should we just stop Bhakti Shastri right now and okay, Nikki?
I always had that problem, feeling like it's circular. That, okay, I have to surrender to Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and at the end, if I read it, I accept he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But I remember, I think in the beginning of the introduction, Srila Prabhupada says we should at least theoretically accept, just at least in theory accept it. And
Yeah, so Prabhupada says at least theoretically accept. Very good. Thank you. Elaine?
I think that you have to start somewhere. So the more you read it, the more you learn, like here in Sangha, the more it gets into your heart and you develop the relationship with Krishna, and then it's working. There's no other way.
Very good. So I guess in some ways it's similar to Nikki. So it's circular, but in a positive way, that you accept it a little bit, then you can surrender a little bit, then you can accept it more, you can surrender more. So the circular can have a positive as well as a negative thing. But just like Prabhupada also says, at least theoretically accept. But also this theoretical acceptance, it makes sense. You're reading a book where the speaker says, I'm the source of all material and spiritual worlds. Everything rests on me. I'm the Supreme Lord, I'm in everyone's heart. So when somebody says these things, they're either completely crazy or they're God. So if you're gonna make the effort to read this book, then at least theoretically accept, because why would you want to read a crazy person's ramblings?
May I add something also?
Yeah, please.
I think that surrendering to Krishna is something we do when we actually realize that this world is not for us. So basically, theoretically, the people that read Bhagavad-gita and understand it are people who are really in distress and really search for something. So when you read it, you understand what you're searching for, that you're searching for Krishna, for God. It's actually beautiful because, yeah, the people that don't search for Krishna, they just keep coming back and they don't see the Gita, and eventually they will. But the ones that find this book, and I really feel like I'm talking from personal feelings and experience, why I found the Bhagavad Gita is because you understand that you cannot be happy in this world, that's not the real true thing that you search for. So it's actually beautiful to be able to discover the Bhagavad Gita.
Yeah, it's unless you understand that you can't find happiness in this world, you can't look for something better. So that's, you could say, in one sense, it's the start of spiritual life. Anagasuri Prabhu or Madhira?
Hare Krishna. Just from personal experience, I think that even though it's a science, it's really beautiful the way the process works. Because when you first come into Krishna consciousness, you can feel Krishna's presence because it reciprocates at the beginning very slightly, just to give you that tiny bit of faith. So otherwise, why would you then delve into the Bhagavad Gita? Because you've got that tiny little bit of something. And then once you go further on, you don't feel anything until then you start getting deeper, and then you start getting a bit more glimpse of Krishna reciprocating. So it's almost like, he's giving you a little bit here and there to let you know that he's there.
Yeah, Krishna gives you little bits of taste just to kind of keep you going, sometimes big bits. Yeah. Yeah, and like you say, it's not just a philosophical or a theoretical understanding, it's taste, it's personal experience as well. And then it's kind of quite closely related to what Prabhupada speaks about next. So what is Bhagavad Gita? What is the purpose of Gita? Is to help us out of suffering, help us out of to deliver mankind from the nescience of material existence. So we are all struggling, just like Arjuna did. Arjuna represents all of us, and just as Krishna delivers Arjuna from his suffering, from his dilemma, confusion, Bhagavad Gita does the same for us. And this is when human life starts, when we ask these questions: who am I? Why am I suffering? And then Prabhupada also speaks about the 5 topics of the Bhagavad Gita. Anyone remembers what are those 5 topics? Or 1 or 2 of the topics? Okay. So
Nature of the soul.
the soul is one, yeah.
Nature of the soul. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Is yoga one? Yoga? Different yogas?
Yoga is, yeah, you could say different yogas. That's also, Bhagavad Gita speaks about it. But when you hear the question, what are the 5 topics of Bhagavad Gita? Then these are the 5 topics. 5 themes. So Ishvara, the Supreme Lord, Krishna. Jiva, the living entity or the soul. Prakriti, material nature. Kala, time. And karma, activities. So these are the 5 topics of the Bhagavad Gita. Okay, try to remember this, it's quite important. Many years ago, I think it's Keshav Maharaj, he put together a course, Gita Life, and this is how he represented the 5 topics. So our identity, at that time Facebook was probably a lot bigger than now, is Atma, who we are. Nature, material nature, Prakriti, I guess it's related to the weather. Activity, karma, is our to-do list. Time, Kala. And then God, Ishvara, is the person we need to connect to. These are the 5 topics of Bhagavad-gita. And then Prabhupada speaks about how of the 5, Krishna and the living entities are conscious. So Ishvara and Atma, or Ishvara and Jiva, they are conscious. And material nature, Prakriti, is not conscious. Both Prakriti and the Jivas are Krishna's energies. So Krishna is the source, and his superior energy is the living entities, Para Prakriti, and his inferior energy is material nature, Apara Prakriti. Okay? And then another categorization is 4 of them: Ishvara, God, Jiva, living entity, Prakriti, material nature, and Kala, time. These are eternal, and karma, activities, are non-eternal, because you can put an end to the kind of action-reaction cycle. Okay, and then Prabhupada also, in the introduction, Prabhupada also speaks about the Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, 3 levels of perceiving God. How Vedic knowledge is infallible, but research knowledge or knowledge gathered by the senses is fallible. When we study Sri Ishopanishad, we'll go into that in quite a lot of detail. Then he speaks about the Sanatan Dharma, which is the eternal Dharma of the living entity. He says religion can be changed. You know, somebody is a Christian, they can become a Hindu, or a Hindu can become a Muslim, like that. But our Dharma, our intrinsic nature, doesn't change. So sugar is sweet. When it's not sweet, it's not sugar anymore, right, Sundari? It stops being sugar. So our intrinsic nature as living entities is to be a servant. And he says, we all serve. So Madhira Mataji serves her husband and serves her child, and Anagasuri Prabhu serves his wife and his child. The shopkeeper serves the customers. The politician says, I will serve my country in this way. So we all are servants. Now we just need to kind of extend this serving nature to God. That's the best and perfect way of engaging our service nature, and that's Sanatan Dharma, that's our eternal Dharma. Okay, and then Prabhupada also speaks about demigod worship, other planets, and then at the end of the introduction he gives these verses of Gita Mahatmya, glorification of Bhagavad-gita, really beautiful verses. And we can just read one of them, this Ekam Shastram Devaki Putra Gitam, Eko Deva Devaki Putra Eva, Eko Mantras Tasya Namani Yani, Karmapi Ekam Tasya Devasya Seva. Sami, could you read just this part?
Apologies, I'm on my phone, so.
Oh, if it's really difficult, we can
No,
ask.
I can give it a go if you're.
Okay.
In this present day, people are very much eager to have one scripture, one God, one religion, and one occupation. Therefore, Ekam Sastram Devaki Putra Jitam, let there be one scripture only, one common scripture for the whole world. Bhagavad-gita, Eko Devo Devaki Putra Eva, let there be one God for the whole world. Sri Krishna, Eko mantras, Tasya Namani, and one hymn, one mantra, one prayer, the chanting of his name, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kamapi Ekam Tasya Devasya Serva, and let there be one work only, the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Thank you. So one activity, devotional service, one mantra, the Hare Krishna mantra, one God, Krishna, and one scripture, Bhagavad-gita. Thank you. So, but there are other nice verses. The Sarvopanishad Gavam, that's another nice verse glorifying Bhagavad-gita. It compares all the Upanishads are like a cow. Krishna is a cowherd boy. Arjuna is the calf. And intelligent people enjoy the great nectar of Bhagavad-gita as a milk. So if you have any experience with cows, when cows have their calf nearby, they are very happy to give lots of milk. So the cow, Krishna, is very happy to give the nectar of Bhagavad-gita when his calf, Arjuna, is nearby. And then we can all enjoy the nectar of Bhagavad-gita. Okay. One more point I wanted to make is, so when we study, I will try to speak about this, but also for yourself as well. So try to look for connections between chapters, between different sections within a chapter, between verses. So these verses are not just kind of random verses put together. There is a flow, there is a reason why they go in that way. You will see that Krishna speaks about something on one level, and a few chapters later he speaks about it much deeper. So for example, chapter 3 is called Karma Yoga, and chapter 5 is called Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. So it's the same thing going deeper. Why? Because there's chapter 4 in between, Transcendental Knowledge. So if you add Karma Yoga and Transcendental Knowledge, you get Karma Yoga, Action in Krishna Consciousness. We saw also chapter 7, Krishna speaks about something, chapter 9, same thing but deeper. Okay, so as we go through the book, I will draw your attention to this, but also please keep an eye out for these things. There are common themes, and also Prabhupada gives so many analogies, stories, arguments about Mayavad, impersonalism, materialism. So try to you can even keep a little portfolio for yourself and also for preaching. Okay, so I try to do my best from my side, but also please from your side try to dive deep in Bhagavad-gita. Okay, and then these are the key themes of Bhagavad-gita. It's quite a lot. You can kind of look through it. I put up the slide after the class. So it's not all of them mentioned in all sections. So there's very little about the modes of nature, let's say in the first 6 chapters. There's a little bit mentioned, but not so much. Okay, and like I said, it's divided into 3 parts. So the first part is Karma Yoga, chapter 1 to 6. 7 to 12 is Bhakti Yoga. 13 to 18 is Jnana Yoga. So they all connection to Krishna, but whether the connection is through karma, through work, through bhakti, devotion, or through knowledge, jnana. Okay, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he describes it as a treasure chest. So Bhagavad-gita is like a treasure chest. So the most valuable thing is in the middle. When you have a box, you have the bottom part, you could say that's Karma Yoga, you have the top part, Jnana Yoga, and between the two, protected, is the greatest treasure, which is Bhakti Yoga. And the middle verse of Bhagavad-gita is Manmana Bhava Madbhakto Madhyajimam Namaskuru Mame Vaishyasi Satyam Te Pratijani Priyosime, or Mame Vaishyasi Yuktaidam Atmanam Yatparayanam. Okay, so always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, offer your homage unto me. Okay. And before we start chapter 1, there is a nice verse, little poem similar from Keshava Maharaj to kind of get us right in the mood. Gunachuda Mataji, if you can read it out. If you can unmute.
The Bhagavad-gita and the cell phone. Ever wondered what would happen if we treated our Gita like we treat our cell phone? What if we carried it around in our purses or pockets? What if we flipped through it several times a day? What if we turned back to go get it if we forgot it? What if we used it to receive messages from the text? What if we treated it like we couldn't live without it? What if we gave it to kids as gifts? What if we searched it when we needed an answer? What if we used it when we travelled? What if we used it in case of emergency? This is something to make you go, where is my Gita? Oh, and one more thing. Unlike our cell phone, we don't have to worry about our Gita being disconnected because Krishna already paid the bill and the battery never runs out. Anyway, now you can have Gita on the phone.
Okay. So we can try to treat Bhagavad-gita like our phones. We can't live without it. Okay. Any points or questions before we start chapter 1? Madhira Mataji?
Hare Krishna. Just one question at the beginning. Bhakti Vinod Thakur had a version of the Bhagavad Gita as well. So what need was there for Srila Prabhupada to produce one?
Each Acharya. Okay, before I give the answer, let's see if you have some thoughts on it and also everybody else has some thoughts. So why did Prabhupada go through this whole thing when there were already so many Acharyas giving Bhaktivinoda Thakur, his grand spiritual master, giving... okay, we have Elaine, then Paramananda Prabhu.
The difference is that up until Srila Prabhupada came to the West, everything was taught to people in India. And I think that he had to help us realize things they're so different for us. So his version is actually opening this beautiful wisdom to the West.
Okay, thank you. It's a very, very good answer. Thank you. Paramananda Prabhu?
Hare Krishna, I agree with what was just said, but my short answer is time and circumstance.
Yeah, very true. Madhira Mataji, do you have some thoughts on your own question?
I did have a thought, but it's sorry.
Okay.
We read something in the introduction about that. Just thinking of it, there was a mention in there. But yeah, now I can't remember what it was.
The Prabhupada does say in the beginning that somebody asked him to recommend the Bhagavad-gita and he couldn't because they were all kind of tainted with selfish agendas.
Yeah, I think was it that even though Bhagavad Gita was widely spread in India, there was no devotees or people that took up Bhagavad Gita from the teachings. So even though it might have been explained properly, it wasn't in that there weren't any devotees formed from reading it.
Yeah, in English that wasn't a good translation, and also like Elaine and Paramananda Prabhu said, for us in the Western world, it's difficult to relate to. So if you only read Bhaktivinoda Thakur, or if you only read Baladev Vidyabhushan or Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, you don't get the same as Prabhupada. It's really nice to read it along Prabhupada's, and then you understand where they're coming from. Because if you just read Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and these really esoteric conversations between Arjuna and Krishna, you can't quite place it, especially from a Western background. But for Prabhupada, he knew how to kind of help us enter that world. And then Prabhupada wanted his disciples to write as well. So we get Burijan Prabhu, Prabhupada's disciple. I find his book so helpful, this Surrender Unto Me. So when I prepare for classes, I always use it. It's really, really good. It's all based on Prabhupada's Gita, but then he helps us understand even more. And then, Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, Gauranga Darshan Prabhu, they are like, Burijan Prabhu is Prabhupada's disciple, Chaitanya Charan, Gauranga Darshan Prabhu, they are our generation, so Prabhupada's grand disciples. So you get so much from them as well. And it's quite often said that if you read the Acharya closest to you in time, that's the easiest to relate to or to understand. It's not that you don't read others, but on their own it can be more difficult to understand. Is this okay? Okay. Okay, so let's start chapter 1. we get the disciplic succession here as well. Okay. So the first chapter is called Observing the Armies on the Battlefield of Kurukshetra. It's the chapter is got two parts, two sections. The first one is verse 1 to 26 is Observing the Armies, and 27 to 46 is Arjuna's lamentation. Okay, and then within Observing the Armies, preparations for war, signs of victory, Krishna as Bhaktavatsala. Anyone knows what Bhaktavatsala means?
Is it parental?
So there is Vatsala Ras, which is parental affection, and it's actually connected. Very good. Megambari, you want to? Okay. So like Anagasuri Prabhu says, Vatsalya means affection or love, protection. So Krishna as the protector of his devotee, Krishna as the affectionate to his devotee. So that's Krishna as Bhaktavatsala. This is the most attractive quality of Krishna. Krishna has all beauty, wealth, power, renunciation, but his most attractive quality is that he is a lover of his devotees. He is affectionate to his devotees. So this is the first part, and the second part is Arjuna's lamentation. So Arjuna, you probably know the story of Bhagavad-gita. He sees all his relatives that he needs to fight, and then he comes up with 5 different reasons why he doesn't want to fight. So these 5 arguments, 5 reasons are compassion, enjoyment, fear of sinful reaction, destruction of family tradition, and indecision. We'll study these in some detail as we go through it. Okay, so these are the 2 sections, Observing the Armies, Arjuna's lamentation. And it's quite interesting that the acharyas, the teachers, some of them call chapter 1 Sanya Darshana Yoga, meaning observing the armies yoga. All the chapters are called something yoga because they're all about connecting to Krishna through that particular thing. So some acharyas call it observing the armies yoga, Sanya Darshana Yoga, and then some call it Arjuna Vishada Yoga, Arjuna's lamentation yoga. Prabhupada called it observing the armies on the battle of Kurukshetra. Okay, and then we got the first verse. Dhritarashtra uvacha dharmakshetre kurukshetre samaveta yutsavaha mamaka pandavaschaiva kimakurvata sanjaya. Paramananda Prabhu?
Krishna. Translation, Dhritarashtra said, Sanjaya, after my sons and the sons of Pandu, assembled in the place of pilgrimage at Kurukshetra, desiring to fight, what did they do?
Thank you. So Dhritarashtra was blind, he couldn't see, but anyway he wasn't on the battlefield. Actually his father Vyasadeva came to him just before the battle and said, do you want me to give you vision just so you can see the battle? And Dhritarashtra said, I didn't see my sons in life, I don't want to see them die. Dhritarashtra is in many ways a very tragic figure. He's blind, not just physically, also spiritually. So many people try to give him good advice. Vidura, Vyasadeva, Bhishma, so many people. And he kept saying, yes, I understand what you're saying, but somehow I can't do it. So he understood that he's doing the wrong thing. He understood that his attachment to Duryodhana and his sons was taking him down the wrong path. But somehow he still couldn't do the right thing. So there's no need to kind of share this with everyone, but we can all think of a time when we did or said something that we knew was wrong. We knew it was wrong, we still did it or said it. And then we can think about, okay, why did I do it? Would I do it differently now? Okay, just so we can empathize or sympathize with Dhritarashtra's situation a little bit. And Dhritarashtra also had this thing that What can I do? It's fate. That was his excuse all the time. But it's not fate. You know, we make our decisions, and that's how we create fate. So we can't blame fate for things going wrong. So he kept getting good advice, and he kept pushing it away. So he said, I didn't see my sons in life. I don't want to see them die. So he knew it's not, deep in his heart, he knew it's not going to go well. So then Vyasadeva gave this vision to Sanjaya. So Sanjaya was the personal secretary of Dhritarashtra, and he said, okay, you can, even though you're sitting in a palace, Prabhupada says through like some kind of subtle television or spiritual television, you can see what's going on the battlefield, and you can tell Dhritarashtra. So this is the situation that's happening now. Dhritarashtra, Sanjaya sitting in the palace, Dhritarashtra is asking, after my sons and the sons of Pandu assembled, what did they do? Now, it's a very strange question. They assembled in the place of pilgrimage desiring to fight. What did they do? It's a little bit like saying, after all the devotees went in the prasadam hall and sat down to eat, what did they do? Okay. And then Prabhupada explains that the reason is because Dhritarashtra is really, really hoping that somehow it's not going to happen. So maybe it's a holy place, maybe it will affect the Pandavas and they will give up their claim, or something will happen. So that's the reason for his question. And okay, and we can speak about other things later on. This verse also speaks about the partisan mentality, or like he says, my sons, Mamaka, and the Pandavas, Pandavash. So even though he should have, as the king, he should have seen them equally, he separated them, my sons and the sons of Pandu. So this also shows that he doesn't have the right attitude. Okay, and this place of Kurukshetra, it was a holy place before the battle. We hear of the bridge passes going there at the solar eclipse to do some sacrifice. Parashuram, after he killed all the Kshatriyas 21 times, he did atonement there. Demigods used to go there to kind of perform sacrifices. So it's a very sacred place, this Kurukshetra. This is the Dharma Kshetra, Kurukshetra. Okay. Let's see the next verse. Sanjaya vacha drishtva tu pandavanekam vyudam duryodhanastada acharyam upasangamya raja vachanam abravit. Nikki?
Sanjay said, O king, after looking over the army arranged in military formation by the sons of Pandu, King Duryodhan went to his teacher and spoke the following words.
Thank you. So this is Sanjaya starting to speak. He sees what's happening on the battlefield. When you read Mahabharata, you see that every day they arrange their armies in different formations. So you can hear some really, like a peacock formation or a needle formation or chakrayuha, all these different. And then the opposing army, once they see how one army is arranged, then they would arrange it in a way that can counteract that formation. So Duryodhan, he kind of saw this and he went over to his teacher, Dronacharya, and spoke the following words. Now, Duryodhan is called king here, Raja. Technically, he's not a king because Dhritarashtra is the king, but because he's an expert in Rajaniti, or politics, diplomacy, as we will see from his words and also earlier from Mahabharata actions, he's called a Raja. And these military formations, Pandavas had 7 armies or 7 Akshuhinis. Unfortunately, I don't know it off the top of my head, but an Akshuhini is so many infantry soldiers, so many cavalry, like on horse soldiers, so many elephant soldiers, so many chariot soldiers, like tens of thousands, lots and lots and lots of soldiers. So that's an Akshuhini. Pandavas had 7 of these Akshuhinis, and the Kauravas had 11. So they had a lot more soldiers, but still they lost eventually. Okay, so he went over to his teacher, Dronacharya, to speak the following words. Pashyaitam Panduputranam Acharya Mahatim Chamum Vyudam Drupada Putrena Tavashishina Dhimata. Megambari?
Hare Krishna. O my teacher, behold the great army of the sons of Pandu, so expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada. Hare Krishna.
So you could, next 8 verses are spoken by Duryodhana. And in one sense, it's a very straightforward verse. You know, oh my teacher, see this army so expertly arranged. But there's so many backstories here. So he says, expertly arranged by your intelligent disciple, the son of Drupada. King Drupada and Dronacharya, the person Duryodhana is speaking to, they had some enmity, some quarrel. They grew up together in a Gurukula, and they were good friends, Drupada and Drona. And even though Drupada was a Kshatriya, Drona was a Brahmana, Drupada said that when I grow up and get my kingdom, I will give half of my kingdom to you. You know, like little boys kind of make these. When I grow up, I buy you a house. You know, children make these promises. So when they grew up, Drupada did get the kingdom, and Drona, he was a Brahmana, he was very, very poor. And he was so poor that his son was teased for not knowing what milk is. And he thought, oh, this can't go on. So I go to my friend Drupada and ask him for something. So he went to Drupada, but Drupada said, you know, you are a poor person, I'm a king, I'm not talking to you. So he basically chased him away. And Drona was very, very upset. So he went to the Kauravas, and the Kauravas took him on as a military teacher. So Dronacharya is a very interesting person. He's a Brahmana, he's a teacher, but he's teaching martial arts, like fighting. So that would be like a Kshatriya's business. So he's a Brahmana teaching Kshatriya duties. And he taught, or his students, he taught both the Kauravas, like Duryodhana and his brothers, and the Pandavas, Yudhishthir, Bhima, Arjuna, Nakula, Sahadev. And when they grew up, then as Guru Dakshin for the teaching, he said, go to Maharaj Drupada and get him as defeat him. So first the Kauravas went and they couldn't, and then the Pandavas went and they defeated Maharaj Drupada and brought him, they tied him up and they brought him to Dronacharya. And then Dronacharya said, now, who's superior and who's inferior now? You said we are not equal, so you're not going to talk to me, now look at yourself. So Maharaj Drupada is a Kshatriya. He was so angry and enraged by this. Drona didn't kill him, he let him go eventually, but Drupada was so angry that he did a sacrifice to get a son who can kill Drona. And also he was so impressed by Arjuna, so he in the sacrifice he also asked for a daughter who will be Arjuna's wife. So from the sacrifice, Drishtadyumna was born, the son who will kill Drona, and Draupadi, who became Arjuna's wife. Now when Drishtadyumna was a little bit older, he actually went to Dronacharya to ask him to teach me the military science. So he's the person who is fated to kill him. But Dronacharya, being a Brahmana, he said, okay, you asked me to teach you, I'll teach you. So this is the backstory of Duryodhana telling Dronacharya, look at the army so expertly arranged by your disciple, the son of Drupada. So he's kind of reminding him, don't be so lenient now that there is a war that you would teach the person who's supposed to kill you. And by mentioning the name of Drupada, he's also kind of trying to stoke the flames of this all enmity and anger. Okay. Atra Sura Maheshvasa Bhimajuna Samayudhi Yudhano Viratascha Drupatascha Maharata. Hitu Prabhu?
Here in this army are many heroic bowmen, equal in fighting to Bhim and Arjun, great fighters like Yudhan, Virat, and Drupad.
Thank you. So Bhima and Arjuna, they are the most formidable. So they are, you could say, the reference point. So Virata, in his kingdom, the Pandavas were hiding in the 1 year when they had to be in incognito, and it was Virata's daughter Uttara who Arjuna's son Abhimanyu married. So that you could say they were like, I don't know if there's a relationship like that in English, but Arjuna's son married Virata's daughter. And Drupada, we just spoke about, his son is Drishtadyumna, who's the commander-in-chief of the Pandavas' army, and his daughter Draupadi is the Pandavas' wife. Drishtaketusche Kitana Kashirajascha Viryavan Purujit Kuntibojascha Shaibhyascha Narapungava. Anagasuri Prabhu?
There are also great, heroic, powerful fighters like Drishtaketu, Chekitana, Kashiraj, Purujit, Kuntiboj, and Shaibya.
So there are more fighters on the Pandava side. Vidamanyuscha Vikranta Uttamojascha Viryavan Sobhadro Drupadeyascha Sarva Eva Maharata. Gunachuda Mataji?
There are the mighty Yudamanyu, the very powerful Uttamoja, the son of Subhadra, and the sons of Draupadi. All these warriors are great chariot fighters.
And these are more fighters. The son of Subhadra is Abhimanyu. He's the father of Maharaj Parikshit, who we'll see in Srimad Bhagavatam, and the sons of Draupadi. Draupadi had 5 sons from the 5 Pandavas. Okay. Asmakam tu visishtaye tan nibodha dvijottama nayaka mama sanyasya samgyartam tan bravimite. Madhira Mataji?
But for your information, O best of the Brahmanas, let me tell you about the captains who are especially qualified to lead my military force.
Thank you. So Duryodhana is thinking, if I only speak about the enemy and the powerful fighters on the enemy side, my side will think that I'm afraid. So I need to also praise the soldiers on my side and emphasize their kind of greatness, to increase their confidence, to increase their fighting spirit. So all this talking that's going on now, this is Duryodhana, very calculated. He knows what he's saying, why he's saying, who he's saying it to. Bhavan Bhishmascha Karnascha Kripascha Samatim Jaya Ashvatthama Vikarnascha Somaddattish Tathaivacha. Aline?
There are personalities like you, Bhishma, Karna, Kripa, Ashvatthama, Vikarna, and the son of Somadatta, called Bhurishva Shrava, who are always victorious in battle.
Thank you. So this starts talking about the warriors on the Kaurava side. Previous was Pandava side, this is Kaurava side. Now, Duryodhana was thinking, okay, who do I mention first? Do I mention Bhishma, who's like the commander-in-chief? He's arguably the most powerful fighter, or do I mention Dronacharya, the person I'm actually talking to? So if I mention Bhishma first, then it's going to look bad that I am thinking somebody else is greater than Drona. So he decides to mention Drona first, saying Bhavan, you, your good self, because Drona is a Brahmana, and then Bhishma won't get upset because Brahmanas, in one sense, are superior than Kshatriyas. And he also uses this more polite you. So in English you don't have this, but in many, many languages you have a more kind of casual you and a more formal you. So in Sanskrit also, so Tvam would be you as like a friendly, casual you, and Bhavan is a more formal. So he uses this your good self. Prabhupada translates it as your good self. So this is the more respectful you. And then he mentions Karna. Remember, Karna is Kunti's son from before her marriage to Maharaj Pandu, from the sun god. So he's a very, very powerful fighter, but he's also somewhat of a tragic character. He's not actually on the battlefield at this point, because what happened before the battle, Duryodhana asked Bhishma for a comparative ranking of the different fighters, and Bhishma ranked Karna quite low, basically to discourage Duryodhana from fighting. He didn't think it was a good idea to fight with the Pandavas. But Karna took offense, and he thought, why should I fight, and then the commander-in-chief Bhishma will get all the glory? So he says, as long as Bhishma is standing and he's the commander-in-chief, I'm not going to fight. So Karna is not on the battlefield, but Duryodhana still wants to encourage him. And then once Bhishma fell on the 10th day of the battle, then Karna came on first. Drona became the commander-in-chief for 5 days, then Karna for 2 days, and eventually Shalya, Marjie's brother, was the commander-in-chief. Okay, we can stop here and then continue from here next week. I think I sent most of you an invite for the Google Classroom, so you can join that. When you join the new classroom, you don't lose access to the Nectar of Instruction one, so if you still have homeworks to finish or something, you can do that. So you join the new classroom. I put up the recording, I put up the slides, and the homework for this today is, don't worry about the first one, but the second one, find all the analogies Srila Prabhupada gives in the introduction about the relationship of the Supreme Lord and the living entities. So things like spark and fire, or drop from the sea and the whole sea. So the relationship between the Supreme Lord and the living entities, and also the analogy relating to how one can mold his activities to be able to always remember Krishna while living in the world. Okay, so there is an analogy towards the end of the introduction there. So read through it, find these analogies, and that's your homework. Okay, so thank you for coming, and I really look forward to reading Bhagavad-gita, studying Bhagavad-gita with you. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Grantaraj Bhagavad-gita ki jai. Sadhu Seva Sadhu Sangha ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Vanchakapata Rupeshcha Kripasana Vegacha. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hare